Well, here we go again, part 2 now of episode 8, and yeah, we still have some terrible weather, so it's going to make for another interesting day underneath this truck, and yeah, we're just going to see how it all pans out. We're still cleaning up our pistons at the moment, and yeah, doing a few little jobs before we start putting things back together. Hi Bailey. And yeah, look, we'll just see how the day progresses. The weather's going to be our biggest Achilles heel. But yeah, we're not going to let that stop us. We'll crack on and make the best of it. Well, we are just using every conceivable part of the workshop today, including the floor. What I want to do here is basically clean the tops of these pistons up a little bit. Just take this oil out as well too before we pop these in the ultrasonic bath. And yeah, we'll give them a, see if we can break these rings free anyway. That's the hope. So, as I say, these are not looking fantastic. But we'll see if we can bring them around. We'll give it our best shot anyway. Got a very, 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 very fine emery paper here, just to try and clean the top of this off. This should be number 4. Yep, which it is. And we've got the word front on there, which is good. So we know where our front needs to be. I'm just trying to find out too, this should tell us how many times this engine has actually been rebuilt, just by looking at the size of the oversized piston. So we'll just have a look now. So yeah, 10,000 of an inch there. So I would say at a rough guess, being that that's 10,000, they go up in increments of 0.5. So it's probably safe to say that this has had at least 1, possibly 2 rebuilds in its life, based on that. So you can take these out to around about 30 thou before you run out of room. So yeah, there's certainly more life in this engine based on that. But wow, there is a lot of corrosion on that piston. So I do not think that is carbon. So anyway, look, we'll clean these up as best we can, and then yeah, we'll see if we can make the best of an awkward situation. Rightio, well, we're not going to stand on ceremony here. We're going to drop these pistons in one at a time. I've got number 1 here I'll put in first. Its rings are pretty free, but there is a bit of carbon there. I just want to see if we can get them any better than they are. And yeah, we'll give it 15 minutes or so in the ultrasonic bath, and yeah, see what a difference, if any, that makes. I'm actually going to try putting a second piston in here as well too. So I've got number 2 here, and if it'll fit, move that out of the way. Alright, well, we'll leave them sit there now, and well, they were sitting there. Let's see if we can get them to sit there, and come back and check them in 10 minutes or so. So I've just had to move everything back indoors into the workshop empty again, as suggested. It's raining. No surprises. Well, I'm just about to call it a night, I think. I've had these last two pistons, so 3 and 4, in the ultrasonic bath for probably around about half an hour now. And all the carbon is gone, but what we're talking about now is just pure corrosion in there. So number 4 has freed up really well. Number 3, which was one of our stuck ones, is yeah, understandably still needing a little bit of work. So what I'm going to do tonight, I've got some brake cleaner here. You know, it's all about experimentation. And what I'd like to do, I'm trying to get those rings out without actually breaking them. So if I can, I'm just going to leave this soak in brake cleaner overnight. I don't know if it busts out corrosion, but I'm certainly going to give it a try anyway. And yeah, we'll just see what this is like in the morning. I suspect there may be no change, but yeah, if not, well, we'll just try another tack. We don't give up easily around here. So, all right, well, that's pretty much a wrap for today. So we've got our pistons here, 1, 3 and 4. They had a good thrash in the ultrasonic bath, which knocked a lot of the carbon out of the ring gaps. But yeah, there was still look, old carbon and burnt oil and garbage in there, and corrosion too. So we left all 4 of the pistons actually soak for a good 48 hours in brake cleaner, and again that took a lot more muck out of those grooves for the rings. However, our problem child from the outset was number 2, and yeah, number 2 is still pretty corroded. So we're going to try a different tact on it. So we'll just go and check it out. So this is our problem child number 2, and if we take a closer look, you can see, aside from the cracks in the top ring there, it's completely cracked through. So that ring is toast. You can see that white line of corrosion that's just packed in there between the ring and the edge of the groove. So we need to probably bust that out of there and obviously replace this ring. This ring is in one piece, but again, it's stuck fast. So what we're going to do, my theory is we've got nothing to lose here. So I've just got a little container and some plain old white vinegar. I think we're going to let the bottom 2 rings of this piston soak for 24 hours and just see if maybe that lifts out some of that corrosion, and we can free those rings up and get them out of there and clean the groove. But again, a bit of a cheap sort of a method, something we can try at home, and yeah, we'll give it a go and see if it makes any difference. I'm just about to finish up for the evening here, and I thought, oh, I'll just have a quick look at this piston and see how it's going. So I can see quite a lot of bubbling action going on here, and it does appear to be shifting some of that corrosion on the top of the piston there. Yeah, I guess I'm just hoping I don't come out in the morning and find it's dissolved the whole top of the piston, but that'll be my fault if it does. But yeah, just see how it goes and check on it in the morning. So our little experiment seems to have worked quite well here. These rings have loosened up considerably, and yeah, we knew number 1 was completely broken, but yeah, it's just allowed us to actually pick that first ring out. It seems to, I don't know that it's actually eaten all the corrosion away, but it's definitely, the vinegar has soaked in there and softened everything up. And now, instead of the corrosion being really hard, I can basically just give it a little scrape with a pick, and it just all comes away. So yeah, that's number 1 ring. Number 2 ring, yeah, might be a little bit of a different story. Okay, so what I've done there, I've just driven a screwdriver that the width of it is narrower than the groove of the piston, and yeah, that's gone straight down in there, and it's actually forced part of this ring out. So and I can see that even though that's in there tight, that vinegar has actually got down in there. So we must be doing some good in there. We'll just keep working that around and just see gently if we can maybe lever that out a little bit more or tap it around. If the ring breaks, it breaks. It's that simple. I do have other rings that we can fit on there. That's why I won't be devastated if it cracks. but it would be nice to get it out of there in one piece. We might actually start getting some penetrant in there as well too now that it's starting to break free. That might just help it. We're just going to throw everything at it and yeah, just see if we can gradually work our way around here. No, well there you go, it's just broken. So that's life, not the end of the world by any stretch. Kind of opens the door now that we can just yeah, maybe get a little bit more aggressive in there to get the remains of that out. Yeah, it was probably pretty high expectations, hoping that that would actually come out of there in one piece, given the level of corrosion in there. And anyway, you know, if it did have cracks in there that we couldn't see, we wouldn't want to put that ring back in there and have it fail once we put the motor back together. So better out than in, as they say. Rightio, well, there we go. So you may be able to see some of the pitting if we're getting close here. That's sort of on the top of this piston, and also too we've got quite a bit of significant pitting around the sides. The reality is we really wouldn't reuse this piston in normal circumstances. So we know these are 10th thou oversized, so if we get serious on this motor, we'll actually be replacing everything. So it'll be new pistons, the block will be bored, probably at 20th thou, and yeah, we'd be looking at getting new bearings cast as well on the entire bottom end. So, but for what we're trying to achieve here, we're just trying to see if this motor will run. So we are going to put these back in. I've cleaned these grooves up. They're not too bad. We've got probably 95% of that corroded material out there, or certainly as best as I can do without actually damaging the edge of these grooves any further. So yeah, look, we'll get some rings fitted up to these, and that'll give us 4 out of 4 pistons to go back in. So while we've just got a little bit of time on our hands this afternoon, we're just going to attempt to take this busted stud out for our exhaust manifold and yeah, replace that. So everybody's got their own way of taking studs out. Some people like to weld nuts on. This stud's broken off sort of pretty much just below the surface of that area there, so it's just going to be a little bit hard to easily weld something on there. I much prefer the other way of just simply drilling and putting an easy out in there if we need to. We may heat that area up with the oxy just to break any rust that might be there. Sometimes these manifold bolts actually pass through into the water jacket, sometimes, possibly not in this case. But yeah, so what I'm going to do, I've got a punch here. It hasn't broken off evenly, so I'm going to just peen it a little bit with the punch on top. And this is just a flat top punch. It's an old blacksmith's punch. And what I'm trying to do here is just make a better surface. We'll pin punch that anyway, as close to the center as we can, but we'll just peen it a little bit first, and that helps just loosen that up a little bit. Okay, that's all we need to do. I'll grab a pin punch now, and we'll center punch that. Okay, I've just got a little center punch here, nothing flash about that, and we're just going to punch the top of that where we think the center is. And it just gives somewhere for our drill bit to sit and stay centered as we try and drill down into the old stud. I'm just going to cover these valves up on this end. I just don't want to drop metal shavings into those while we're drilling. I've got a 4mm drill bit here, and I'm just going to try and drill straight down into that stud. Just a little bit further. There we go, we found the bottom of our hole. Okay, that's 4mm. I'm now going to take that out to 6mm. Okie doke, that's our 6mm drill bit there. That's the bottom of our hole again. Rightio, we'll get our easy out. Okay, so we've got our pretty standard easy out here. We're just going to tap that into the hole that we've made. Okay, and then we're going to get just a normal crescent spanner, and it'll be lefty loosey, righty tighty. We'll slide down as close as we can to the actual the head itself, and we'll just try and turn that. And there we go. One stud. Okay, so I was about to put this stud in, and then I thought to myself, well, we've got a few young viewers on the channel, and they may not be aware of just this little trick. I see all too often where people use vice grip pliers to put these studs in. Please don't do that. Vice grips really are a tool of last resort. They're going to rip the shank of that little stud up, and yeah, look, they're an emergency tool. You know, if all else fails, if the the head of the bolt is completely stripped and you need to grab hold of it, well, use a set of vice grips. But yeah, realistically, yeah, not the tool for this job. All you really need to put these studs in and also take them out is a couple of nuts that fit that thread. So I've cleaned these threads up on this stud, so it should wind in fairly easily. So we'll just wind it in as far as we can by hand, which is about there. And if we put our nuts on, just wind the first one down the shank a bit, put our second nut on there. Now you will need a open-ended spanner and a ring spanner, and what we're going to do is just slide our open end on the bottom nut, and we're going to tighten one nut up against the other there. Okay, now what we're basically going to do now is just use the ring spanner on the top nut, and we can wind that stud in the rest of the way, like so. We can give it a little nip up. We don't want to over tighten it. We've just replaced it. We don't want to snap it off. And then we're just going to use our open end spanner on the bottom again, loosen those two nuts off. And hey presto, there's our stud installed, no damage. So yeah, just a good little trick. As I say, the old guys will all know that one. It's a pretty common thing to do. The other thing, we were missing all our brass nuts for our manifold bolts there. So the other hot tip is just don't throw anything away. I went for a bit of a rummage through my large BSF nuts and bolts collection, and yeah, managed to turn up 6 of the original brass nuts, which would have come off another head. And that's the tip, like, just because it's an old nut or an old bolt doesn't mean it's garbage. You know, you don't have to race out and buy new stuff. If the bolt's damaged or the shank of the bolt is rusted away, obviously, you know, replace it. But where the bolt looks physically okay, if you've got a wire wheel, you can clean that bolt up. And with threads, and whether it's a nut or a bolt, generally you can clean the threads up using the right tap or die. And yeah, there'll be nothing wrong with these bolts. So that's another tip. Just hang on to all that old stuff, because you just never know when you might need it, and it might just be the nut or bolt that gets you out of trouble. Okay, well, we've just had a tiny little bit of a break in the weather here. So next job, we're going to try and get these lifters out if we can. And yeah, give them a bit of a clean up. Some of them are pretty badly seized in the block. So yeah, we'll give that a go. I might have to get underneath and try and tap them out past the cam. Some of these are really badly stuck. This one's okay, he'll come out. But yeah, there's more stuck ones than there are loose ones. Okay, so I've just crawled back out from underneath the truck. So yeah, just by rotating that cam a little bit at a time, just making sure that the lobe, the top of the lobe is out of the way, we can just squeeze a long skinny punch up in between the cam and the bush that holds the lifters in place. And yeah, we can basically just very gently tap those lifters up. So there's no real easy way of showing you how I do this, I don't think, but what I do is I basically rotate, that's my camshaft, I rotate that around and I can just, in some cases, get that punch up in there underneath the lifter, and I can start tapping that lifter out. I can see a bit of rust on that camshaft as well too, so yeah, we know there's been some water in this motor for sure. Well, to say that we've got a pretty average set of lifters here would definitely be an understatement. What I'm going to try and do here, I've got some quad zero steel wool and a little bit of brake cleaner. I'm going to just work my way through and try and clean, just very lightly clean the surface rust off. These lifters need to just slide up and down. You can just put your finger in them and pull them up and down. They need to slide freely in their little bush there and ride on top of the cam. I think if we do that, as my grandfather would say, that'll stop them farting in church. And look, it'll be good enough for the test that we want to run. So one of the other little jobs we need to do is get right down inside here as well and just clean out. There's a lot of like sediment and gunk that is stuck down in there from years of abuse. Really important on these lifters, because not only does this little hole at the bottom allow the oil to move out and help lubricate that bush that the lifter sits in, it also lets oil drip out, and that goes directly down onto the lobe of the camshaft as well. So yeah, pretty critical that we make sure that there's no rubbish left in the bottom of that, and yeah, we give this cam and these little lifters a fighting chance. I get all the good jobs, eh? I guess for better or worse, I've been hoping that I could avoid actually replacing this head gasket, that I might be able to reuse it. But having a closer look at it, yeah, I don't think that's going to be possible. It has separated in a couple of spots, and yeah, it's corroded also in a few spots as well too. So yeah, I think that'll be our first major expense on this little exercise, will be a new head gasket. So that's 140 bucks right there. What I'm going to do next, now that we've got our head gasket out, I've got a 6mm drill bit here, and I'm just going to work my way down through these little openings here in the block, and just make sure that we clear these out. Now these allow our water to pass from the block up through into the head and circulate around, keeping everything cool. In an ideal world, we'd be busting out all of those Welsh plugs down the side of the block, and we'd be getting in there and hosing everything out that we can out of that block. This is not an ideal world, and in this scenario we're not going to be doing this to the motor. So in our next step, we're just going to start trying to clean as much of the outside and the inside of this motor as we can. I don't know about you guys, but I don't particularly like working up to my armpits in grease. We're not going to get this motor spotless by any means, but we definitely want to give it our darndest to try and get as much rubbish out from inside the motor. So yeah, we're just going to give it a good all over clean, and yeah, try and get as much rubbish off as we can. I've just discovered a little broken plastic container while I've been degreasing. That's actually got some missing parts off the distributor. It was tucked down inside the body here. It was so covered in filth I couldn't see it. But yeah, obviously when someone's taken it apart, they yeah, put that little container in there and saved a few of those. So that'll save me looking for that part anyway. Okay, so we're back under the truck at the moment, and I've just taken the 6 bolts out from around the top of the cover that sits over the oil pump in the bottom of the sump. So we can slide that up, and we should be seeing a mesh filter that's meant to be just around this pump, and it is missing, so that's not good. That mesh filter, it's really just a sticks and stones filter, but it is the engine's first line of defense against any large metal particles that might be suspended in the oil. We don't want any of that going through the pump and back up into the rest of the motor. So a really important little sticks and stones filter, that one. I'm going to go and have a look and see if I can find a spare anywhere on an old oil pump that I can clean up and get back in there. But yeah, for any of you guys or girls that might be looking at your barn find motor and wondering where to start, that's not a bad place. Take your sump off, and I could nearly guarantee there'll be sludge in the bottom of the sump, but this filter will probably also be sludged up. A lot of people don't know it's there, and if it is badly sludged up, it'll cause low oil pressure, and yeah, it's obviously not going to work as it should. So anyway, that's a good place to start, and we'll go and see if we can find an old mesh filter to go back on there. So just for the sake of making this a little easier to show you, I've got an oil pump here from my big box of spares. If we slide that shroud back, we can see the bottom of the oil pump, and there's the mesh filter that sits there. Now what we do have to do is actually take the bottom of this oil pump off. So there's 4 more bolts here which hold that oil pump in, 2 long, 2 short. And the good news is that the bottom of this is actually keyed, so you can't physically put the bottom of this pump on the wrong way. It just won't fit, and I'll show you that in a sec. So we'll whip these out. Okay, now if we lift the bottom off the pump, now this is your check valve. Don't take that apart. We'll wiggle that off, and what you can see, we've just got a little indent here, and that fits into this part here. So you can't physically get this on the wrong way, if you know what I mean. We'll slide that back up again. This is not the greatest filter in the world, but it's probably better than no filter. Now, remembering this is going to be upside down, so there is one gear here which is going to want to slide out. It'll just pull out and fall out. Just look after it. This other one's not going to go anywhere, and this mesh filter literally just slides straight off the end then, and you can take it out for cleaning. Sorry, I'm trying to do this one-handed. Not going very well. Come on, play the game. Need an extra arm. Right, so that's basically what we've got in that truck at the moment. This is what we're missing. Okay, so we've fitted our little sticks and stones filter on there now to Holly's top of Holly's oil pump. We'll get that reassembled, and yeah, that's another job we can tick off. So kicking and screaming all the way, we're slowly dragging Holly back from the abyss. I've just been using my little brass wire brush to clean the top of the block off, and yeah, just something interesting that we've uncovered here. If you have a look, I don't know, it should bring it into focus. We've got 5/1000ths of an inch here, and that's basically been stamped beside each pot on the block, which definitely makes me think that this is the truck's second rebuild. So I would say at some stage in its first rebuild it was 5/1000ths of an inch oversize, and then next rebuild 10/1000ths of an inch. So yeah, but there's no other major damage that I can see there. I thought that I did have a crack just here, but then I realized it's actually a scratch. I've probably done that. But yeah, it's yeah, it is coming together. Those cylinder walls are pretty sad. Yeah, we're going to have a battle on our hands there, I think. But look, I'm just about to give them a good spray out, and we'll run the hone through them, and yeah, see if we can bring them back. so to speak. They won't be as good as new, but we can probably make them better than they are currently. Now, if you looked at that honing job that we've just done and said to yourself, geez, really rushed that, you'd be 100% correct, because I've just checked the radar and there is a massive amount of rain coming. So I am definitely fighting a losing battle against Mother Nature here today. So we're going to clean these pots out, have a bit of a look at what we've done, and yeah, hopefully we've cleaned a lot of that surface rust out. We're not going to get rid of the pitting, that's there for keeps until we board the engine. But yeah, hopefully we've got it good enough that yeah, we'll get some compression back in, and yeah, we'll have enough to fire. That is rougher than a cat's tongue, but it is still better than what we had. You can see there that that's been quite badly rusted there. I don't want to hone anymore. I just think we're not going to, we're never going to get that out without boring it. So all we've really done here is added some cross hatching to this cylinder, or these cylinders, in the hopes that we'll trap some oil on those cylinders and help us get a good seal against the rings. But yeah, all in all, it is what it is, right? So it's better than we had, but yeah, I guess we'll know soon enough if it's going to work. Well, it's the 1st of November today, and I'm still wearing a beanie. It's about probably around about 11 degrees at the moment. What we're going to tackle first on this today, see you, Blossom, is we're going to do pistons 2 and 3. They were the ones which were most stuck in the block, and I suspect if we're going to have issues, they'll be the two that'll give us problems. So yeah, what we'll do is we'll put in one piston at a time, turn the motor over, and yeah, just make sure as we go that everything is free and is moving as it should. Well, for the first time this week officially, we've got some of that yellow stuff up there. So it's actually warming up a little bit. It's not supposed to last, but I tell you what, I'm going to enjoy it while it's here. It's always a pleasure working outside on a fine day. Well, all of that went together really well. Pistons are in, and we got our lifters back in too. We only had problems with one sticky lifter, and that was on cylinder 1, and it was the exhaust lifter. And when I had a closer look, there was just a tiny amount of rust in the sleeve. So I cleaned that off, and yeah, basically everything's working fine. So we've hooked the battery up to it just to check that everything's still turning over. It is a little bit tight, and that is to be expected, the fact that we've now freed those rings up and we've also deglazed the bore. So yeah, I'm not expecting that to give us any trouble. The other fiddly part is just putting those bearing caps on, because in some cases you do have to fit the tiny little brass spaces there. And yeah, take a couple of measurements, and you've got to be very careful not to over tighten those caps. It is very easy to put too much pressure on that bearing, and yeah, then you're going to run into grief. We know these bearings are sort of at the end of their life, so yeah, we need to tread softly, and that's exactly what I did. I just took my time and yeah, made some very fine adjustments until I was happy and the motor was turning over freely. So the other tip I wanted to give you, I've got my dad's old oil can here, which you'll see me using all the time. When I put these motors back together, so as I'm going, I tend to use the old 80W90 gear oil. And the reason I do that, it's not going to hurt these motors because they are everything's all heavy and cast, but I just feel that 80-90 hangs on a little bit longer in the bearings, and yeah, if you want to turn the motor over before you've actually got oil in the sump, I think anyway that it just, you know, probably hangs in those bearings a little bit better and reduces the chances of any wear and tear or extra wear and tear on the motor. So it's all starting to come together rather nicely. You may recall, however, that we were missing the rocker assembly when we took or started taking the motor apart. So I think our next job will be to actually take a drive over to the boneyard and yeah, see if we can muster up a rocker assembly. I'm pretty sure from memory I've got a partially disassembled engine in one of the sheds there, so which has a good rocker assembly in it. So yeah, we'll go and have a bit of a sticky beat. Okay, so we've arrived at one of the boneyards, I suppose. And I'm just rummaging through some parts here. There's a disassembled engine in this truck, and I think I can spy a rocker assembly if I can get in there without killing myself. Oh dear. May Gordo says he who dies with the most toys wins, but the hardest part some days is remembering where all your toys are, I can tell you. Rightio. There's a good water pump there, we might be needing that. Anyway, so we've got one rocker assembly, and we did have one dodgy push rod, so in an ideal world we wouldn't be recycling, but we will today. So I've got a couple of spare push rods there, and we'll need some head bolts, or head nuts I should say, as well. So we'll grab some of those. Actually, you know what? Let's grab the whole bin. That's probably the best way to go. Pop that back in there, and then we've got everything we need. So I've done a little tally up of what bolts we had, and I realised that I'm actually missing just a couple of bolts. So while we're here at the boneyard, I'm just going to grab a few more so we don't have to make 2 trips. The other thing we wanted to get as well too was 4 of those larger washers for the back of the manifold. We had 2, we need 6. So we'll grab a couple of them as well while we're at it. Well, I think that gives us all the parts we need for now, so we're going to drive back to the shed now and yeah, clean that rocker assembly up and yeah, go to the next step. we finished cleaning up our rocker assembly, and probably no surprises, and in keeping with the rest of the truck, there's quite a bit of wear and tear on those rocker arm assemblies, just at the point where they actually sit on top of the valve, and that's really no surprise. We should definitely have enough adjustment to be able to take that out when we set up our valve clearances, so I'm not anticipating that this would be a showstopper for us. So just a couple more tantalising clues as we play detective and try and drill down and work out why this truck was parked up or why the engine stopped running. I've been doing the roll test on the bench, and I've found 2 push rods that are bent. Now we'll definitely replace those, obviously, but it's got me thinking, because in part 1 when we pulled the head down, cylinders 2 and 4 had stuck valves, these push rods from cylinders 2 and 4. So it's really got me thinking. I'm wondering, you know, I doubt simultaneously they would have stuck valves in both cylinders, but maybe over time, maybe the first valve on one cylinder got stuck open, no compression basically in that cylinder. The truck will run on 3 cylinders just, and then down the track the second valve jammed open, and yeah, suddenly the truck wouldn't run. So you've got to love Tasmania, and that's just how quickly it changes. I've literally just finished recording that little segment about the push rods, and I heard the pitter-patter of rain on the roof, and sure enough, it's starting to rain. So I've raced to get the covers back on Holly's engine there to keep the water out, and yeah, I guess we'll be waiting for the rain to stop now. So just while we're waiting for this rain to stop, there's one little job that we need to do on this head that we hadn't got to yet, and that is to fit the water inlet pipe or jacket assembly on the rear of the head. Now these, I've got to tell you guys and girls, are totally repairable. So this was one that was completely rusted out. I repair a lot of this stuff. You know, you just can't go out and buy them. These ones, for some reason, probably because they do get weak inside here, sometimes you find that they'll crack, so it's handy to actually have a couple of spares. Now this one pretty typically was just rusted out all the way around here, and what you can do with these, because they're a cast part, as long as you do a preheat on them, and yeah, I'm not talking cherry red hot, I'm just talking warm them up, you can actually weld on them. Now if you get yourself some cast iron welding rods, what I've done here, where it was rusted out, I've got in there, I've cleaned everything out. I then put it in the electrolysis bath and cleaned every skerrick of rust that I could off there, and then I've just gone along with the filler rod and gradually built that up, and then put it on the linishing sander and basically turned that all back into a flat surface again. So it's a good mating surface for the back of the head. So I've knocked myself up a little gasket here. I'm going to fit that on here, and we're going to put this on here. I've got my brand new copper gasket here. I've also got some copper gasket sealant, which is a high temperature sealant. I'm going to try that this time instead of using our zinc spray, just for something different, just to mix it up. Now this gasket, we're pretty lucky, it actually tells us which is the top and which is the bottom. It is marked on there, and yeah, we really have reached the point of no return. So we're going to hook in, get this head on, and get everything tightened down. So for those who might be uninitiated to the Tassie climbs, it's very typical what's happening here at the moment. We're having a downpour of rain, but the temperature has literally dropped 10 degrees in the space of about a minute. And yeah, we're starting to actually get a bit of sleet now. And yeah, wouldn't surprise me if it snowed. Well, what can I say? It has been a crazy afternoon this afternoon. I've had everything. I've had sleet, I've had rain, I've had wind. It has just been silly. So I didn't really get the opportunity to tape a lot of stuff this half, but suffice to say, we're a lot further along. Our valve cover plate is back on. The distributor is back in and aligned. That was out by 180 degrees. We've started to put some of our water jacket parts back on. I've changed the water pump out. This water pump is not great, but at least it turns. Yeah, so I think tomorrow, yeah, we should be ready, just about to fire this thing off. Plugs are in, and I have been turning it over. We've got really good compression, which is surprising. So yeah, hopefully tomorrow, who knows, we might be good for a start. We'll see what tomorrow brings. Well, welcome to another beautiful morning in Tasmania. I just can't believe it. The sun is out. There is not a cloud in the sky. Just an amazing day. I think we're up, feels like day 579 something on Holly the rescue truck's engine reassembly. But yeah, I'm hoping today is the day. So got some noisy chickens in the background. So I'm just going to get these chickens and ducks fed and yeah, do a few chores, and then we'll be back into Holly. So I've grabbed another Lucas generator out of my big box of spares. This one has the correct pulley on it for an LC3 engine, so that's why I'm actually going to the trouble of changing the generator out. The other one doesn't, so I just want to give that water pump a fighting chance. I know it'll be as noisy as anything, but yeah, I've got the right size or the correct belt for this setup. So yeah, putting the right generator, or putting the generator with the right pulley on, will certainly help that a little bit. One of the things you may or may not be aware of with these Lucas generators, there's a couple of things about this one that we can tell straight off. It is a genuine Lucas generator, you can see by the stamp on there, but this is a replacement generator. So if the generator on your truck is original, then chances are it'll have made in England on it. This one's actually made in Australia, so it would have been made under license. The arrow here, of course, tells us which direction it's meant to turn in, and we can tell that it's also a 12-volt generator. Now, the other really interesting thing here is there's two significant numbers on this generator. We'll zoom in. So the 4 and the 58. So what that actually represents, I believe, is that this generator was manufactured on the 4th month of 1958. So yeah, if you're struggling to identify, you know, potentially the age of your truck, if you are lucky enough to have an original generator on there, then yeah, that may give you a bit of a clue. So Olive Oil's generator, I think, says the 650, which basically means that generator, not the truck, the generator was produced in 1950. So that means that truck is then post or 1950 or later in terms of its actual year of manufacture. Okay guys and girls, so it's been one heck of a morning this morning. It's been busy as. I've swapped out the coil. The coil that was on the truck was measured open circuit and it was hooked up back the front, which was interesting. So we've got a Nippon Denso out of the spare parts bin, just a little 12-volt coil. It should work for us. We're using the original HT leads and the lead to the coil. That was all with the truck. We've got our temporary oil pressure gauge hooked in here so we can check and see if we're making pressure. I have actually changed the oil filter buried down in the bottom there, so that's been done. We've got our belt on here and I reckon that water pump is going to make some noise. Our manifold's in place now with our carby mounted. We've topped up our oil, so I think we are pretty ready to start turning this over and seeing if she'll fire. So potentially one of the handiest little devices you can have in your toolkit. It's just a spark plug checker. One end plugs into your plug, you put your HT lead on this end, and if you've got a spark, it lights up in here. Simple. So I think we're nearly ready to go here. We've got our gravity feeding fuel tank. That's just unleaded with a zinc additive. That's gravity feeding through this fuel line, which is going to run down and into my little test tube here and down to the carby. So that's all hooked up. We know we've got fuel there. We've got oil in the motor. The only thing I did forget was to hook this line up here, which feeds oil up to the rocker assembly. I've done that now, so that's all good. We've confirmed that we've got spark. We've got our temporary ignition connection here in case we need to shut it down in a hurry. We've got our starter here. And just in case, I've also got a fire extinguisher as well, just in case. So yeah, it does look just a little bit, how's your father, Beverly Hillbillies, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, look, we'll give it a go and see if she'll fire. Okay, well my guess from that is we may not have a lead or leads in the right place at that rate. What have I done or what haven't I done? We'll have a bit of a dig around. Well, I guess we've probably found the limit of where we can recycle our parts to. So what happened, I've gone back in, I've checked all the HT leads. Everything there is okay. I've double checked my coil, made sure that it's okay, everything measures okay. But what I did do then was I took the distributor out and had another look there. So what I found was that the mechanical advance in the distributor was partially stuck. So I freed all that mechanism up. But more importantly, what I found was my points were at the end of their serviceable life. Yeah, I guess I'd hoped that I could get away with it, and I had set the gap at 0.25 mil. But yeah, look, basically things weren't happy there. So what I've done, I put another set of points in, and that's where we're at now. So we're just about to give it another try and yeah, see if we've made any difference. Rightio, there we go. First time in goodness knows how many years, and she's fired up. It's running rough, but yeah, look, this is an awesome start. So I'd say my points were definitely a major contributor into the reason why it was carrying on the first time. But there you go. So quite a few days work gone in here, and we've got this to start now. So yeah, we'll do a bit more tinkering and see if we can get it to run properly. think we've still got some timing to do here. I think we might be about to lose our battery there. Well, everyone loves a happy ending, and yeah, that's my happy ending right there. So look, that engine runs surprisingly well. The smoke that you were seeing is just the oil on the outside of the engine burning off. So look, guys and girls, where to from here? What would you like to see next? I mean, we can keep going down this track. I will put a radiator on it and give it a little bit more of a run. But do you want to see if we can drive this truck? Does it change gears? I think we've got over a pretty big hurdle today, and I'm exhausted. So yeah, I might take a day or two off and just reflect on everything that we've gone through here to get it to this stage. But yeah, what a result, what a result. Anyway, guys and girls, look, I'm so glad you could join us. Look, I really appreciate you tuning into the channel and all your comments and the feedback. It's wonderful, and yeah, it gives me the drive to keep pushing and to do some of this crazy stuff on these old trucks. So anyway, that's all for now. So from me, happy restorations, safe travels, and bye for now. When your old vintage truck needs some loving, there's only one place to go. And if Brad hasn't got it, then he'll probably make it. Brad Dunn, Vintage Truck Supplies. Oh, you lazy old whippet, Haley. Are you getting some sun? Hey, I don't blame you.